Mons, and I am one of the hosts of the hit show on Fox Soul called The House. And I also am a clarity coach, working to help people find clarity and elevate their lives, among other things.
Okay. So where were you born?
I was born in Michigan.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, well, actually Warren, Michigan.
Okay.
But I grew up in Detroit.
Okay. Mom and dad?
Both from Detroit.
Both from Detroit. What kind of work did they do?
So my mother was a model and also worked for the IRS.
Oh.
And my dad was in the military,
Okay.
career military.
And where do you live now?
I live in Rancho Mirage, California.
Do you have any children?
I do. I have two sons. One is 18, the young one, and the older one will be 20 in a couple weeks.
Okay. Are you single, married, dating?
I'm married.
How long have you been married?
I just got married actually in August of this year. However, my partner and I will be celebrating 9 years together next month.
At what point in your life did you begin to know that you were different?
Pretty early. I'd say probably early elementary school, like first grade. Yeah.
What about your first kiss?
My first kiss was probably
From a boy?
grade. First grade.
First grade.
Yeah, Isaac.
Okay. And your first sort of relationship
First relationship.
with a boy?
Okay. So we're clarifying.
Yes.
So I'd say probably my first full-on relationship was in the mid-'80s with my first partner.
Okay. And how was what we deem as coming out, so to speak?
Mm-hmm.
How was that transition for you?
The official coming out story would be to my grandmother, which was kind of funny. It was in the mid-'80s, that first partner that I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
She had called me, and Jewel, who was the owner of the Catch One, which was a very popular night spot here in the Los Angeles area back in that period of time, had just gotten married to Rue. And he and I had attended her wedding, and Rue had passed along all of the sort of wedding planning books. And I was at home thumbing through them, and my grandmother called. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm thumbing through these wedding planning books."
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Oh, well, is congratulations in order?" And so we kind of laughed. And she said, "Well, who is the nice young lady?" I said, "Well, it's not a young lady." She said, "Well, who is the nice young man?"
Mm-hmm.
And so that was sort of the, coming out
Right,
thing.
right.
And I laughed. And she said, "Why are you laughing, grandson?" And I said, "Because you didn't miss a beat."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Hey, you like him, I love him."
Yeah.
So that was it. I mean, I didn't have a hard time with that, fortunately, and I surrounded myself with people, like in terms of my peer group. My best friend was a straight guy who always supported me in being who I was.
Right.
So I had the great fortune to have really good people in my life that really didn't demand of me to be anyone other than who I was, and so I was who I was. But I chose those people. So
Right. So you did date women.
yeah.
You did date women. Now, when you dated women, did you just date women, or did you date women and men at the same time, or?
Pretty much women and men at the same time.
Oh.
There probably was probably in my early teens where it was women exclusively, just because boys at that time weren't just readily available.
Right.
Like who we are today in society is very different than when I was coming up. I go back to the first grade, because in first grade I had a boyfriend and I had a girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
And but also what I was very clear about is having a girlfriend was socially acceptable and having a boyfriend was not. So that relationship, and I called him my little boyfriend, I mean we were like 6 years old, but I knew that had to be between he and I, unlike the one with the girlfriend where everybody thought that was oh so cute. So it's very interesting. So you get those messages very early on, and then as you grow up and move through life, relationships with guys at that time was, at least where I grew up, that was something that you kept quiet.
Right.
So that teenage years, I had girlfriends, and I might occasionally, hook up with a guy or something. But it wasn't until really college that I started seeing someone on the regular basis. And then after I finished college, 'cause I had a girlfriend all through college.
Okay.
And I did tell her, that I like guys as well. And so she was aware of that, and
Oh.
because
I went
I-
along with it.
yeah. She said, as long as you don't, date guys at school. So that's what I said. The boyfriend I had was in another city. So it was having like these two lives.
Wow.
And then, and again, he was someone I just saw, on breaks and
Right.
things like that. So it wasn't like we had an ongoing talking every day and
Unlike
stuff
her,
like
you
that.
guys had a relationship.
Yeah,
And
and he
just-
was, somebody that I hooked up with, but ongoing.
Right.
And he was older also. So I remember when I graduated, and he had bought a house and took me to it. And like he had all these ideas about us in the future,
Wow.
which was like never like on my radar at all.
Right. Right.
So I was just like, I'm moving to California.
Right. What you thought? Right.
So, I thought that was very interesting that he had this whole idea that he had never even shared with me.
Of y'all life together.
Yeah. And what was also interesting about that is he had a girlfriend.
Oh.
And so when I would come, I remember one time we went to the ballet, and he took both of us.
Oh.
And I knew who she was, but she didn't know who I was. So it was very interesting. So it was kind of indicative of the time.
Well, honey, I think she knew who you were. She just did statement and I went to a ballet. Okay.
Well, it was funny because he put her in, she met us at the theater. So
He didn't even go pick her up.
And so-
No,
yeah, he did it actually.
That's
And I thought that was interesting,
Wow.
but I was just in for the weekend.
Right.
So
I bet.
but once I moved to California and, into my life, I was my early 20s, after finishing undergrad. I dated one girl in California, and I remember going to see She's Gotta Have It with her.
Oh, okay.
And I remember sitting in the movies thinking, nah, I don't have to have it.
Thus the end of
That's
the
the
relationship.
end of that. So that was the last female that I dated, and from that point forward, I dated men exclusively. I just thought it was too complicated and just unnecessary.
Oh, okay. Well, what's your favorite color?
That's an interesting question. That's one that you would think I'd readily be able to answer. I like shades of gray.
Okay. What's your favorite food?
Oh, fried chicken. Yeah, fried chicken is my favorite.
Okay. Now,
And German chocolate cake is my favorite dessert.
you writing your first novel.
Sure.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
What year was that, and how old
Oh,
were you,
wow.
and how did that come about? And
So let's see, how old was I? I guess it was 20 years ago.
Ooh.
And so that would have put me at 38 years old at that time when it was finished.
right.
So it probably took me about a year to write it. So I was in my, mid to late 30s. I had always written, and it took my mother to really remind me of that, because I never really thought of myself as a writer. But when I was writing the book, it started out as a play actually. I had written it originally as a play, at least
Right.
the first part of it. And going back before that, my freshman year of college, I wrote a play called Cinderella Rated R, a different type of fairy tale.
Oh, okay.
And that was, I wrote it, produced it, and actually put it up at the Wharton Center at Michigan State University. And so I always had this writing, but I just saw it as something that I just did naturally. I really didn't think much about it. I mean, I was a business pre-law major who was dabbling in my creative side, if you will. And then when I was working on How to Ruin, which the book is How to Ruin the Perfect Child, when I was working on that, I started it out like a screenplay. And then I decided to convert it into a novel. And my mother told me one day, she said, "Do you remember you won the Quill and Scroll Award?" And I had actually forgotten that. So when
That you won the what?
Quill and Scroll Award.
Okay.
So it was a writing award that I won in high school. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right, I did. So maybe I'm not a half bad writer.
Right.
So yeah, I started working on the story, and the characters just started to come to life, and it really, you know, it's the story of these twin brothers and their paths, and
Right.
each of them choose a different path in terms of dealing with who they are as people. And I think that, you know, just it's interesting because I just described sort of the time, right, that I grew up in, and I think it represents that, you know, what path do you choose, and do you negotiate yourself away to fit in, to be a part of, etc., or do you live boldly and take the risk of being ostracized, possibly, but really living on your own terms? And I'm someone who lived on my own terms, so.
Clearly. You chose to self-publish
Yes, iUniverse.
iUniverse.
Mhm.
And how well was it received? What year did it come out?
Came out in 2001, and I think we moved like 15,000 units. So all on my own. I self-published, I put my own marketing tour together, and I can't remember exactly how many cities. I think I went somewhere between 7 and 10 cities.
Wow.
The local bookstores. I went to Sacramento, San Francisco.
And this was 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Wow.
And the book's still available on Amazon.com, and people still buy it. And I still get small, but I get little royalty checks every
Right.
quarter, which for 20 years has been, every time I get one, it just reminds me of it. I mean, I'm
Right.
pretty much removed from the book at this point, 20 years later.
Right.
But each quarter when that royalty check comes, it just reminds me of something that I created, and that is alive out there.
Right.
So that's a really powerful feeling.
It is. It is. And to have something to contribute to the LGBT community
Yeah.
is a plus.
Absolutely. And that will outlive me.
Yeah.
So that feels good. It's while I've always been very much committed to the community, both as a member of the community and wanting to model, we're told because we're gay or lesbian or trans that certain things aren't available to us,
Right.
or that we can't have this or we can't be that. And I never ascribed to that.
Right.
And so for me, just living my life was the bold testament to living my life as an out gay man was really, really important, because I wanted people to see what an out gay man can be. And there's all kinds of us, right?
Right.
And I wanted young people to be able to see, wow, this guy is like doing the damn thing. And I like that. And so when I see young people today who have the freedom to love each other and
Right.
to do that early,
Right.
it's very exciting.
Oh.
And I think back to the marching and all of that stuff, which paved the way. And they don't need to know that. It's just I look back on it and I smile, and saying that it was all worth it. And so when I look at the show today, it isn't even a matter of coming full circle. I think it's just the next step in a trajectory of my own life. And How to Ruin was about the LGBT community, about the gay community, but it
Right.
was about blacks
Right.
as well. It was about the black community.
Right.
And that was really, really important, because I always integrated my life. I didn't live it separately. I didn't live on the fringe.
Right.
So I brought my boyfriend home and called him my boyfriend.
Right.
I didn't pretend like he was my friend.
Right.
I didn't let you pretend like he was my roommate. So if somebody said this is your roommate, I'd say, no, this is not a room. He's not my roommate. He's my boyfriend. Like, he's not just my roommate. He's my boyfriend.
Right.
Like, that kind of clarity was really important, because it's so easy to let people frame it up for you
Right.
with what they're comfortable with.
Exactly.
And I never allowed that. And so some people thought that was a nuisance. It's like, why you gotta always, you know? And I said,
Emphasize.
right, you know? And I said, well, you know, you should really look at why that's a problem for you,
Right.
rather than me trying to explain to you. Because if it's not obvious why that clarity is needed, then you need to think about it. So that is sort of always my personality, right? So when the show came along, the opportunity to be a part of this show, one of the things that was really important to me is that we could bring people to the table. The setting is a dinner party, and we have a guest, and we sit down with that guest for the entire episode. It's a 1 hour show, so we probably spend at least 45 minutes with the guest. And that was really cool, because we really get to talk to the guest. We get to know the guest. And unlike most shows where the person comes on to either it's very salacious, or they just come on to market whatever it is they're up to, their latest book or their movie. And I didn't want to be a part of something that was that. Because
And then they don't get 45 minutes either.
They get a segment.
Right.
Yeah, they maybe get a 8-minute segment, if that. So this was a real opportunity for the audience to get to know the guest, and also kind of get to know the hosts.
Right.
Because we're all very different.
Right.
And so you get to know us, and we interact with the guests. And the feedback has really been incredible in that it has lived up to the integrity of what the director and the executive producers told me they wanted the show to be. And in this business, you know, things can start out one way, and then by the time it airs, you're like, what was that? I don't remember that, you know, in editing or other places, or what they decide to emphasize. So I really respect the director and the producers of this show for holding the integrity on the vision.
So how did it go about that you got this? How did you?
Well, I got a call from the director and said that they were doing the show.
Was he a friend of yours, or was
He was someone that I knew.
Okay.
Yes, I do know him. Yeah.
Chisholm, baby, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do know the director.
Okay.
And they wanted a certain chemistry for the hosts.
Right.
And they said they wanted someone who just wasn't gay.
Right.
And just had a life and happened to be gay.
Right.
And that's how he saw me, as someone who had a rich life as a father, is, you know, hardworking, committed, and interested in having a positive impact, and is also gay, and very comfortable. That part was very clear.
I want to go back to this gay but not gay.
So what was said to me, I understood, you know, I think sometimes gay becomes a caricature. And I think that's how I interpret it. He didn't use those terms, but that's how I interpreted it. And if you think about code switching,
Right.
and you think about that concept of how, particularly when you're unable to integrate yourself fully into your life, and so you might move through your professional life in one way.
Right.
Back in the day, you know, you'd see a person at the office, and then you see them at the club, and they were a totally different person, you know, and they were kicking and spinning and snapping and screaming. And there's nothing wrong with kicking and spinning and snapping and screaming, but it was a persona.
Right.
And I think that's also what he was saying. It's like, I wasn't there to be a gay persona.
Right.
I'm Antonio Mons, who's a black gay man, and it is a part of who I am. I mean, all of it informs each other, and that comes through, I believe.
Now, did you know the other guests? How many?
No, I didn't.
How many people were on the show?
There's 4 of us.
There's
4 hosts.
4 hosts. And did you know any of them before?
No.
Did you have to actually audition? Since he knew you, he just said, "Okay, I like this idea." Blah blah blah. Did you have to actually audition?
So I don't know if it was technically an audition. Because I think I was bringing something You know, I have this joke, you know, my husband gets a kick out of it because I always tell him, you know, this is invitational.
Let's be clear.
Let's be clear. And that's how my life is. You know, I'm invited often to be a part of things. And I think it's because of how I move in the world. And so, I mean, I can think of the last 3 professional positions that I've had. Each of them were invitations where people called me saying, we want you for this kind of thing. So this felt very much like the same thing to me. If someone had seen my body of work, and when I say body of work, I'm not talking about being a writer and that, but the totality of who I am in the world. And it's like, okay, we want that for this. So that was how I interpreted the invitation. And we did have, they wanted to check the chemistry of the group, so they did invite us all together and just chatted with us. So maybe that was a low-key audition.
Now all the original people stayed?
No.
They brought to,
Yeah.
So you said they brought y'all together for chemistry.
Yes.
Now that first group that they brought together for chemistry are not the actual people that actually made the show.
No, one was swapped out. Yeah. Yeah. One.
We don't have any representation
Yeah.
of ourselves and ourselves being spoken about by ourselves.
That exactly.
So it's always someone else speaking about us. So to find the house, I was like, wow, a breath of fresh air.
Wow, thank you. That warms my heart because that's why I'm so proud to be a part of it. To be absolutely honest, I got a call from a cousin who she lived here. She grew up here in California. She lives in Detroit now, and she had heard about the show. She had seen the show, and she called my mother to get my phone number. She's my second cousin. And she called me and she said to me, you know, I just wanted to call you and tell you not just how much I love the show, but I wanted to talk to you more about you and your trajectory. She says, I remember when you first came to California when you with her father, who was my great uncle. And I had come here on a road trip when I was a teenager. I was 15. It was my first trip here to California. And she says, I remember I didn't want to go back to Detroit. I stayed the entire summer. I was not going to go back. And you know, my family insisted that you are not going, right, you're 15, what are you talking about? So anyway, what she says, I remember like who you were then. And you were bold and you were courageous. And she says, I remember when you went to the airport and you told me, I'll be back. And I said, and I remember that. And actually, when I graduated from undergrad, I graduated in June, I moved here in July. And so for her to remember that 15-year-old and now see this 50-something-year-old doing this project and all of the steps along the way, like she's gotten to watch me from afar. You never know who's really watching you. She's not a cousin that I talk to regularly or anything like that. But it was such a touching moment because it was someone who saw you, who had saw me then, and sees me now, and sees the same guy. Like that guy was always there, and that warmed my heart because so many young gay, lesbian, bi, trans people, they get snuffed out early, and they never become the things that they dream of or the things that they want to be for whatever reason, that something gets shut down in them because someone's told them that they're not enough or any of that. And so I was just glad to have someone who could witness me with that kind of purity, and it really moved me. So I just wanted to share that because it's great to hear that people love the show and you know all that. That's wonderful. But from my own personal contribution to the world that I came to do, to have someone witness my trajectory and know that I've stayed the course.
Well, I'm one of those people too. Remember, I was there in the very beginning of How to Ruin a Perfect Child 20 years ago.
Yes, and I have the award that your organization gave to me, and those are those beautiful moments in life.
Right.
Like I'll never forget that in our hometown of Detroit.
Exactly, in our home city.
That's right.
Exactly.
And to be recognized, like to
work
be
that you do.
correct, and to be recognized by, because we can be really critical of one another.
But so critical.
We can be so critical of one another.
So critical.
So that meant the world to me, to be recognized by a Black gay organization who saw my work and said, "You're doing something that we respect and can appreciate." So, and thank you.
About your life as a city official, or what is that?
Oh, I sit on the California Redistricting Commission. So every 10 years, a commission is seated. So I'll be a commissioner from now until 2029, and then they'll seat the new commission in 2030. And so every 10 years, the lines are drawn so that we can make sure that fair voting representation exists. It is done nationally. California is one of a handful of states that has independent bodies that draw the lines as opposed to the legislature. So it was about a year-long interview process. There were 22,000 applicants, and I'm one of 14 who was seated on the commission. And we're actually wrapping up our work, and we voted on draft maps earlier in the month, and the final maps will be due to be presented by the 27th of December by law. And yeah, hopefully, the maps may get challenged, which means they'll have to, go through the legal system to get approved. And it's a big ordeal. It's an honor. I'd say this, being a commissioner, as well as being on the show, both of these things were born out of a desire on my part to be involved in projects that were high impact. And I remember saying that before either of these opportunities presented themselves. I said, what do I want to do with my time? How do I want to contribute? And I said, I want to be only contributing my time to high impact opportunities. And these things, the universe put them in front of me.
Put them in front of you. That's how life
That's
works.
how it works. I try to tell people.
You put it out there.
Launch those rockets of desire and be available and ready.
And ready when they show up.
Ready when they show up.
An amazing life, a father, a husband.
Yes.
A challenging career.
Yeah.
What more could we ask for?
Okay. And I love it all. I love it all. And being a father, by the way, it's funny, I joke, it's tongue-in-cheek,
right.
But I became a father shortly after the release of How to Ruin.
Okay.
And in anyone who's read How to Ruin, I tease a sequel to the book, and it's 20 years have gone by, and I got steeped into parenthood. My oldest son is now 20.
Wow.
And maybe I'll be able to find some time to actually get the sequel finished now. Because I tell you, being a father was a high priority. I'm proud to say that I never missed any of my children's performances, parent-teachers conferences, sporting events. I remember sitting in a 102-degree temperature in a suit watching my son play football, screaming the loudest. Just a couple years ago, because it was his senior year on the football team, and I committed to them. I told them, if you open an envelope, Dad will be there.
Right.
And that was so important to me, to make sure that my children felt supported in whatever it is that they want to do.
Right.
And that was a high priority. So that's sort of my apology and love letter to the readers who have read How to Ruin and they wonder, what have I been doing for the last 20 years? I've been raising these two young men, and I'm so happy to see them, spreading their wings and heading off into their own adventures. So I think that will give me a little bit of time to get that sequel done.
Well, those of us that have read the book can't wait for the sequel, and we don't care about you eating out here. We want that door. I want to thank you so much for participating again for Black and Lesbian Transgender Extraordinaire. getting our stories out there, telling our stories by us, for us, and to us. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I appreciate you as well.